In this model of dual coding, we have the initial state, which is represented by these black blocks of text only, which is just a single mode of learning. But for dual coding, the bridge to dual coding, as you can see there, is when we change up the way the information is presented by combining words, which are represented by the black elements, with visuals. So the first visual here is a infographic or a bar chart in 3 dimensions. The next visual, represented by the green elements, is a map, and it's a map through a garden, a landscape, or a Google map, for example. And there are small chunks of text which might be the labels annotating the map. So it's a visual journey through a landscape. And then the third example of dual coding is there is a small block of text represented by the black square, and then we have a animated explanation or figure. This could be a video or a screencast or animation of some sort, a diagram explaining the concept. So that is the concept of dual coding, where we combine words and visuals, but it would also apply to multimedia learning, such as words and video or words and podcast. Interleaving is when we switch between ideas while we study. So here we have 4 different ideas represented by these 4 different constructions here. Each one's a separate idea. And then interleaving means making connections between the different ideas, and we switch the order that we might cover the ideas and make connections between them. You can see the connections between this idea, which has the same purple element, and this idea here, or this concept, and they share the same element. So that might be tumours with epithelioid cells, for example. And here I've made a connection between this idea here and this idea here, and they have a common element as well. So they've got this spire, and that may be another common morphologic element or a common illness script where they may both belong. Spaced recall or spaced practice is when we learn a particular concept, represented here by this piece with a window and a blue and a red piece on top. The piece of learning is presented as a single item, and I've put it here on a yellow stage. When we do spaced practice, this is not the only time we have encountered this piece of learning. We have to view the learning through this window of opportunity here, and the opportunity leads to this next structure, which represents our spaced practice. So we go through the window of spaced practice, and we study the same piece of information, say 24 hours later, and then a week later, maybe a month later, and then maybe 2 months later, and that might be 2 weeks before the exam. Here is the door that leads to the platform of the exam question. But when we view this piece of learning, we can easily bring it to mind, because we look through now this door that's really quite transparent, and we can see all of the previous recalls of this information. So it's really easy to bring this one to mind because of our spaced practice. Retrieval practice is bringing information to mind. So here we are, the learner, and here is the information we have to learn. It's represented here on this purple platform. There are 3 elements we have to learn, and it's been written on a flashcard. Retrieval practice is about not just re-looking at that piece of information again, but to put it away, close the book, turn off the video, close your computer, so that there's a barrier between you and the information. And you have to practice bringing that information to mind. A good way to do this is with a flashcard. And here we've made a flashcard of the same information. So the flashcard is the clue on this side and the answer on the other side. As a student, I have to remember or bring to mind what's on the other side of the flashcard. Here it is, to practice retrieval practice. Examples. This is using specific examples to understand abstract ideas, and it's collecting examples into like an example library. Well, this is what we use slide collections for. And here we have repeating elements, which are the round circles on the bottom. They're slightly different though, but they're related. So this is a library of examples, and I can link the similarities between each idea, and so I understand how the example applies to the overall concept. It's easy to share these examples with friends, and I can explain the relationships to my friends for added benefit. Is represented here by the idea in the red brick. So it's fairly simple, basic, with no frills. Now the key to elaboration, or opening the window to elaboration, is to explain and describe this idea, the red brick, with many details. So I'm going to elaborate on the red idea by building various versions that are more detailed of the concept. So here's version 1, and here's version 2. And I can build stories around the elaboration because they've all got greater details, and I'll be able to make connections between the different ideas to explain how they work together, and also describe how they are similar and yet how they are different. View of the 6 power tools for learning. This is dual coding, elaboration, concrete examples, retrieval practice, spaced practice with the exam at the end, and interleaving, relating similar and different ideas.